Yeah, someone told me, or the internet told me that I'm eligible for 700K. It's not about climbing the ladder. It's about making sure that the ladder is against the right wall. So I was deployed.
Wait, so
And then you
you
have
weren't
military
planning
service.
on going to West Point, basically.
Listen, long story short, a recruiter and I, we kind of tried to set up a little meet and greet or whatever. Nothing happened. We tried again. Nothing happened. Maybe like 2 months went by, and I was like, all right, well, I got to do something. A good way to start is neurolinguistic programming.
I felt like, what am I doing?
From a purpose-driven environment, it is really tough, or a mission-driven environment, it's really tough to make the transition because most most things outside of the military, it's not that they don't have mission or purpose, but a lot of their value prop is directly related to what their shareholders want. Or
Everybody's ambitions in life are limited by their own belief. Welcome back to the Catch Up Podcast with your host, Brian Sumo Sumardi, your number one place to feed your curiosity. And today I got my boy, Patricio. I go by Pat.
yeah,
Welcome to the podcast.
no, thank you for having me, and I appreciate it. It's been a long time coming. Obviously, we've kept in touch over the years. I've watched all everything that you do.
It's a lot of stuff.
So, hey, man, but always, supporting from the background, and then obviously this is a way for me to kind of give my contribution through time to your efforts. So,
I love it.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I just want to say you back. Oh, I guess a question. I'll let you answer this. So if you were in an Uber and the guy asked you, "What do you do?" What do you say?
Uh, I would tell him I'm in the military.
Just in the military.
That's just the main grind, the main hustle. Um, that's like my main space. That's pretty much what I live and breathe.
Nice. I don't know if you know this. When I started Sumo Lifts, where we kind of met after our hiatus,
Yeah, yeah.
I created Sumo Lifts for a transitionatory space for service members to get back in the civilian world.
That's good, man. It's a big thing. It's definitely a unique space. I mean, I see people all the time. I have people in my organization right now that are transitioning. These are folks with 20 plus years in the military, and they have no idea what to do. Obviously, they have hobbies, children, and all that, but from a purpose-driven environment, it is really tough, or a mission-driven environment, it's really tough to make the transition because most most things outside of the military, it's not that they don't have mission or purpose, but a lot of their value prop is directly related to what their shareholders want, or some other entity that has a different interest than just accomplishment.
Yeah, no,
Right.
it's funny that you say purpose because I want to say November last year, I kind of went through like a mental breakdown,
Yeah,
figuring out. I think I was talking to you about it
a
too,
little bit. Yeah, we talked about it.
and it was just like, what is my purpose? Because I got, I don't know, during the holiday seasons, like when I feel the most connected to the service for some reason, and it's like that true feeling of family,
Yeah.
and the fact that now or during that time, maybe like 5 years out, I got out in 2018. I felt like, what am I doing?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I'm working to build my family. I'm working to like build up money, but then like for what reason
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
comes to my head all the time.
And
But I don't know. What's your thoughts?
I think that, the military in general does a very good job of probably on purpose to a certain extent to like really make the world, or make your military service like super simple,
Yeah,
right? So, they give you a place to live, sleep, eat. They give you all the accoutrements that you might need in your life, and they simplify it. They tell you, hey, the only thing you have to do is wake up, go work out, go do whatever it is that your boss tells you, and then kind of rinse and repeat for as long as you possibly can.
yeah,
And then obviously sprinkled in there are opportunities to like learn, develop, travel, and do all this other stuff. So yeah, I don't necessarily. I can't speak to the transition piece
Yeah.
because I haven't arrived there yet. But I have been able to watch folks transition, hear their stories, talk to them about where they're coming from, and then I have family members who have transitioned and friends. Um, and yeah, it's tough. I think part of it too is just once you get out, the feeling of purpose is kind of nebulous, right? Um, unless you spend a very long time contemplating and meditating on what it is you want to do, it's hard. And in the military, I think you end up developing a lot of different skills, and so you're almost like a Swiss Army knife. And society really has shifted to, I think, a reward specialization, right? Like the tech space rewards specialization. Talking about specialization, right? So society kind of rewards specialization, and the tech space kind of, or the tech, excuse me, revolution kind of lended itself to that. Where if you were a computer engineer or a software designer, like that specialized skill was so unique that they just paid you a lot of money.
That
In
sounds like industrialization back in the day, but I feel like we've gone away from it, but we're kind of coming back.
So yeah, so well, what's happening now is not necessarily that generalists are going to essentially become like they're gonna. It's not like they're gonna pay generalist software engineer money,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the value of the very basic things like communication, an environment, a team dynamic, reading and writing, maybe doing some basic math. Those things are a little
Getting
bit
paid less.
more. Yeah, but I think they're becoming just as valuable. So if you bundle that with a certain level of either specialization or industry like specificity, you can carve out a nice little niche for yourself. But obviously, a lot of that also now depends on your geography
Mm-hmm.
and where you're at. Where in metropolitan areas, it might be you might have a little bit more money, but a lot more competition. Where in other smaller places, you may be kind of the foam that rises to the top. But I say that to say that I think what happens a lot of times is the military does a very good job of teaching you to brag about yourself while you're in, and then when you transition out,
Elaborate about that.
translation. Well, I'm just saying, like, so there are a lot of soft skills that we develop, I think, in the military, both through habituation and through whatever field that we're in. So I look at the folks that uh, the folks that I work with every day. I've got folks who come in and they manage certain programs. They manage everything from beginning to end. They uh, manage equipment, sign equipment in and out.
Mm-hmm.
They are very autonomous. And if I ask them to write a resume tomorrow, none of the things that I just said would be in that resume
Right.
because
They don't know.
it,
They think
it
it's normal.
well, it's not that I think it's normal. It's just it's very hard to try to talk about it in a quote unquote civilian context. And I think that is, if there's one thing I wish that I could eliminate is this divide of, oh, like there are certain words and things that I'll say around my military friends, but then when it comes to an interview process, obviously these people are not going to know what certain words mean,
Mm.
but you can, instead of using synonyms, we like almost like retool, re-engineer the same thing, and we almost take the value the out of what it is that we were actually really good at.
You know that's funny. I think well, to me, I'm relating it to something where I hate. For me, it's like I get into fights with my girlfriend all the time.
Yeah.
It's like she doesn't get mad at what I say; it's how I say it.
Oh, okay,
So
okay,
when
okay.
if you talk to a civilian, it's like they're looking for specific words or
Yeah,
the way you
yeah,
say it,
yeah,
how you say it,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
that shows your perception, or they judge you on who you really are on their perception of you.
Yeah, so anybody who's interested in kind of hacking communication to a certain extent, like a good way to start is neurolinguistic programming. So it talks a lot about both verbal and nonverbal cues and kind of the habituation or science behind it. Yeah, so in normal conversations, we tend to look for anchor words.
Yeah.
Anchor words, when you talk, when somebody says, I'm in the military, even though your brain has already made judgments before they spoke, when they say the word, when they say I was in the military, your word, your brain doesn't immediately register the whole sentence. It just
Yeah.
says military,
Yep.
and then you attribute whatever you have to the military, you attribute that to somebody else.
The word that I was thinking is the semantics.
Semantics. Ah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly what you just said, or how you described it. People, like, I think there's the term, if you put in a sentence like, I live in a red house, you put in red, I am where I live house, you can still read it in a passage if you're like in the middle of a sentence. It's crazy how your brain works for that.
Oh yeah. And
But
so yeah, to button hook all this, it kind of so I was just watching a short video about these guys that communicate or that kind of are putting these ads on social media for communication. You know, uh, the guy was introducing himself and he said, "Hey, I'm a 5'6" a 5'6" guy who's a pilot and has over 100 hours or whatever, and that's how he introduced himself.
yeah,
That's how we normally introduce ourselves.
right.
Hey, my name's Pat. Um, I'm from Silver Spring, blah blah blah. Like, and eventually, I don't even put the value prop at the beginning. I kind of ramble through some of the anchor words at the very beginning to get people to feel comfortable,
Right.
and then I add my authority. But maybe by that time it's too late.
Yeah.
Maybe you only have a couple moments to make an impression. So he was saying instead, say, "Hey, my name's Pat. I have over a decade of experience in the military. Da 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 da."
Yeah.
And so that already makes it already. The anchors are you're just changing the anchors.
Yeah.
Right. So now people are going to be like, oh, well, this guy has something important to say, maybe.
Right.
Right. But now they at least know, like, I come with a decade of experience in two different fields and I have a tech background, whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
that value is there. Everything else that I say after is really just trying to build connections.
Right.
But my value prop is up front. So
I find that crazy when I've learned that too. Instead of saying like, "Oh, I've been a pilot for 10 years," instead of saying that, like, "I've been a pilot for at least a decade." Just that one change of phrasing, you're like,
and again,
wow.
Going back to semantics, right? Like, so obviously, like saying in part, and there's a reason, there's a physiological and psychological reason for it, but I think it's because when you put a number, we tend to kind of know, or we essentially like have a visual of how long 10 is, right? Like, we learn to count from 1 to 10
Right.
since we were very, very little.
Yeah.
But when you say a decade,
it's like
grand. People are usually using those words with larger things that have taken so much time.
Yeah.
Because of, like, you want to talk about like decades. I mean, the things that are normally talked about in decades are like policy, movements, feats of greatness, both in any field. A decade is a long time.
Decades, centuries. Like, to be honest, like, that's something that I'm learning now.
Yeah.
Because of my experience in the military, you think of, we want it short, sweet, to the point. On radio, we're like, hey, we're 10 clicks away, over, done.
Yeah.
But like, I think in real estate that I have to learn when I'm describing real estate, this house is grand. It has a marvelous living area.
Again, it's just understanding those anchors, right?
Yeah.
It's like any other conversation. When you meet people or when you're networking, it's not necessarily that you're short-circuiting the conversation or you're going in there with an ulterior motive. It's just understanding, like, these individuals respond in a certain way to certain words.
Yeah.
And to say, that it's like saying this is a big room versus this is a grand room.
Yes.
Or this room is grand. right? Or something along like this bathroom is extremely spacious, even though it's the smallest bathroom in the house, right?
Yeah.
And again, there is pros and people can look at it from all different ways. Some people are saying it's overzealous or exaggerated, or they're exaggerating. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's finding again the right words to say in the right space. But
Okay. Let's
super interesting.
let's get into back into transition tour. Like, so when I'm thinking of transition, a lot of the things that I want to talk to with the audience that I have is like, how do you get from A to B? But something that I've been learning recently when I think about even like with my nutrition and fitness, like there's macros and there's micros.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's not only like how do I just become successful, is how did I get from living in Silver Spring, going to Einstein High School to like where I am now? Like how did you choose to get into the military?
yeah. So the interesting part I always say is the military kind of thing started off like most out of necessity. Um, so during while I was in high school, I was very deep into entrepreneurship. Um, I was on CNN. I was on the DC Mayor's channel. I was in PR, traditional PR, Sirius Radio. Doing a lot of stuff that was very much popular, or much more popular, obviously now because of social media.
Mhm.
Um, so I really didn't have to go if I didn't want to. Um, and then that summer, I was kind of faced with a challenge where I was either going to go to Chile for a whole year and essentially help the university there establish their entrepreneurship program, or um, I was going to do the military.
Yeah.
For me, I always wanted to serve. Something about the uniqueness of a brotherhood um, that only you can share with the people that you were there with
Yep.
is you can't find that anywhere else. It's not the same as sharing something with a sibling. It's not the same as sharing something with your best friend that you've known for your whole entire life. It is just a unique thing. And some of those experiences can be as short as a 30-day training exercise, and some of those can be as long as a year to 15-month deployment. So, and there's obviously mixtures of it in all in between. So I was wanting to serve, and I think if I the longer that I would have waited, the harder it would have been to serve.
Right.
So I said, you know,
Opportunity
F it,
cost.
let's do it. Yeah, F it, let's do it. I always told myself that I could always kind of get back into entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
That obviously changed as the years went on, but that's where I started. And the catalyst for a lot of this was I knew that my parents didn't have enough money to send me to college,
Hmm.
so I was going to have to make my way. Could I have worked? Sure,
Yeah.
but I think you just I think I got way more than I bargained for. Looking back, obviously, but when I was making the decision, it was really just I get to serve in the military and possibly pay for my college or go to college while I'm in the military,
Yep.
and that's a win-win. So uh, I decided to join. And that whole experience was even very unique because I originally did the Marine Corps DEP program um,
I didn't
my
know that.
junior year. Yeah, so I did the whole thing where I would go a couple of days a week to the recruiting station, practice pull-ups, learn about Marine Corps history, and then we one weekend we went down to Quantico. We toured the museum there. Shortly after it was built, the new nice one.
Hmm.
We met some of the other recruiting units or offices down there. We were learning how to do DNC, just basic little things to get you ready. Um, and then yeah, then
Did you go to the Rockville recruiting office?
nah, the one that I went to
Silver
was
Spring?
in Silver Spring, where
Okay.
they moved it now, I think, but it was across the street from the fire station.
Oh,
The
yeah.
It was in that little shopping center. There's a 7-Eleven there now, I think.
I know what you're talking about.
But that was where my recruiting office was, and then on the back, obviously, it's like facing kind of the metro. They had like a little alley, and that's where we would kind of work out and all that. So So yeah, and the funny thing is the job that I was essentially like slotted for was actually going to be in the reserves. Uh, yeah,
Okay.
I was gonna be. I don't know if I was gonna be an intel guy or not. It was something.
With the Marine Corps?
Yeah, with the Marine Corps. So that was like
Okay.
the job I was essentially like I essentially signed my initial contract for. And yeah, then went through that whole process, and then fast forward years later, um, my dev contract expired. So I had to kind of essentially renew it, right?
Hmm.
And yeah, the same recruiter guy was about to transition. I really did try to kind of join,
Yeah.
and it was one of those things where there were so many things that were getting in the way, like life,
Yeah.
things outside of my control. And I was like, someone's trying to tell me not to do this.
Right.
So I should probably like not fight this
Okay.
to a certain extent. So long story short, a recruiter and I, we kind of tried to set up a little meet and greet or whatever. Nothing happened. We tried again. Nothing happened. Maybe like 2 months went by, and I was like, all right, well, I got to do something.
What was happening?
No, just like he was like, hey, come down to the office. Okay, I'm gonna be there. And then he's like, hey, I'm not there. Just a lot of he wasn't giving me the cold shoulder. It was really just more like the universe like didn't want it to happen. Like there are just some moments where like the universe like you get a flat tire, the things change, like just there are
Yeah.
just things that are outside of
Last
my
minute
control.
changes. Yeah.
Yeah, that are just like and they're not like a oh hey I forgot or hey I'm here. Like I just whatever happened for a reason and that was not in the cards.
Wait, so how did you transition or how did you regain posture to go into the army from there?
So once your debt contract is over, like you don't really owe the government anything. So you can't.
I didn't know you had like a contract while you were in the debt program.
Yeah. So debt program, at least the way I understood it back in 2009,
Uh-huh.
is you sign it going into your senior year, and it's essentially like a good faith contract.
Okay.
Hey, I'm a student. Uh, I will join the military after I graduate.
High school.
And yeah, after I graduate high school, this is a job that I want, and all of these conditions are going to be met, but I have to graduate.
Okay.
But then you only have that contract is only good for a year.
Okay. Oh,
So
but so you're contracted to whatever branch at that time.
yeah, you're. Let me just make sure it's all good. I think I lost it.
Maybe. Yeah.
You're essentially committed to that debt contract.
Okay.
So like it's like again
To
it's
that
like
branch.
yeah
Oh,
to that
okay.
branch.
Okay.
So once that contract expired, um, you essentially are free to or you're free to kind of pick. You're like a free agent.
Oh.
So I didn't have anything in the cards. So I ended up going already called. And then I ended up going to the Army recruiting station in Rockville, right across the street from Richard Montgomery.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I think it's like a joint one over
Right.
there.
Because that was funny. Did I ever tell you my story with that?
No.
I went in trying to go to the army, but when I went to the army, they were on lunch break. On the door, it had that little square thing.
Yeah,
I'd be back in 30 minutes.
yeah.
And then I was like, I'm here. And then I look across the hall, the Marine Corps is right there.
Yeah.
So I sat in with them. They sat me down for like 30 minutes, gave me the whole spiel.
Yeah, they buttered you up.
They were like, where do you want to go? Like, they to me, it felt like they actually cared about me. Because when they gave me my cards, they were like, all right, what do you care about? I'm like, I care about traveling. I like cars. And
again, the value prop, the value prop for the military is up there. But in the long term, it really ends up just changing for people. But
yeah,
man, it's that whole process is so funny to think about. Like, just, I mean, I like obviously biased thinking about it now.
Yeah,
but just, I mean, from both sides, like obviously they're taking advantage of youth, but I think ultimately though, to a certain extent, it's a job that's kind of required, especially because you really don't know, excuse me, the talent that I wouldn't say gets wasted, but just there is some talent to tap into. Um, ultimately, uh, in the military. So, or at least like to those young kids. I mean, these are kids that have a long life. And some, only serve for a short amount of time, and that's okay. But they've given some contribution. They've helped their uh, fellow service members, and contributed ultimately to the nation. So I think that in and of itself is of value,
Yeah.
because that is something that they can hold their head up high, saying that they did. Um, so it's good work.
Well, fast forward into
But
like
yeah,
5 years in, because you started out Army enlisted and then went to officer side. I've only been on the enlisted side, and most of my friends are enlisted, so I don't know anything about the officer side. Tell me about that transition and what the
yeah.
differences are.
So again, purely luck. I'll be honest. So I was deployed. Um, I was at that time, right before I deployed. One of the contracts, or one of the things I told myself that I was going to do, is go to college.
Okay.
So I ended up going. I started at UMUC.
Yeah.
I took like 2 or 3 classes while I was deployed. But while I was taking those classes, I was like, hey, I told myself, I said, I have to go to like a physical classroom. Like this whole doing online thing. This was like 2012. It's like online school now is way different, way better.
Okay.
But back then it was like these like forum boards and like all this other stuff. So it was a terrible experience, to say the least.
Okay.
Um, so I was like, hey, I have to go to a physical class. So I was like Googling while I was deployed, like, in-person schools. Like I was gonna go to Pikes Peak Community College, which is the college right outside of Fort Carson in Colorado. But I was like, let's see what other options I got, right?
Yeah.
So ended up finding this website. It was a college. They said it was the United States Military Academy, and they were like, we're accepting active duty applications. So I was like, oh, okay, well that seems like I'll get, not one to say special treatment, but like preferable, right? It sounds
Yeah.
like obviously like it's a good reason why they probably take them. So I applied. Couple like a week or two later, maybe I don't know, sometime after, I get an email from this lieutenant colonel, and they're like, "Hey, um, we want to like talk to you about possibly being accepted." Um, and this was to the prep school program, because they said, we understand that a lot of the people that maybe are interested don't have strong SAT scores, haven't been in school for a while, this, that, and the third. They just need to kind of get back on the cart. So that's what happened. They essentially accepted me to the prep school, because, and then it's funny because I still have the paper. They eventually, when I went to the prep school, they gave me my packet, which is kind of like a report card for how my packet went through the board,
To be an officer
or at least to be accepted
to the
into the
school.
prep school.
Oh, okay.
So they like look at a bunch of different criteria, and then they like some of the people that I guess specifically for my thing like wrote comments,
Hmm.
and one of them I remember was like has great leadership potential, blah blah blah. Right? So
Did
it's
you
like,
write that or they
no,
wrote it?
they wrote that. This is
Oh.
like it's like almost looks like minutes from a meeting. Like it's just written out, kind of what their comments were as they went through the process of being accepted,
Okay.
which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Just because obviously these are people who don't know me. So
Right.
anyways, so I did my year of prep school, and then for the most part, as long as you do well, you get accepted into West Point. So I ended up surviving, and then went to West Point and did my 4 years there. And then obviously you go through all your normal undergrad stuff,
Wait,
and
so
then you
you
have
weren't
military
planning
service.
on going to West Point, basically.
Listen, I will tell you that I'm still learning to understand like how unique it is to go to a military academy like today.
Yeah, 100%.
Like it's just I went there and they were like, all these people went to the military academy, and I'm like, I don't even know most of these people, or like they went here, like why here, right?
Yeah.
So just I was again completely disconnected. Part of that is just because
You just
these
didn't
are
know.
not schools that were talked about.
in our high school.
At our high school, or let alone family or whatever, right? So like you really don't hear about these.
Yeah.
So again, I just looking back, even though all of the details are important, I think ultimately,
Micros.
yeah,
I was mentioning earlier, full circle.
The macro part of that is
You want to go to college.
I was given, well, more importantly than that, I think I was given an opportunity based on something that someone saw.
Yeah.
Whether it was very small, maybe it was a moment, or maybe it was just potential. They saw something extremely unique and thought it was important enough, or thought that I was important enough to give
Advantageous
myself
for
the
you.
opportunity.
Yeah.
To give myself the opportunity to serve.
You know, I
And
want to take
it's
the
important.
time right here. Like, this is something that I'm learning right now too. It's like, these are the people. I think I want to talk to you about this too. Everybody's ambitions in life are limited by their own belief. Kind of like how we were
Yeah.
talking about how, like, in high school with our families, like, I had no ambition to go to the military growing up.
Yeah.
I only came in because I wanted to be a personal trainer, and then no one would listen to a 19-year-old talking to a 30-plus-year-old.
Yeah.
They're like, "What do you know about fitness? You're a kid. You're supposed to be fit."
True.
So I was like, "I'm gonna join the military to do that." And I'm like, "Okay, boom! I got an opportunity." And then my eyes start opening up. Similar to your situation where you got into West Point, like, "Oh, this is an opportunity."
Yeah.
And we were just open-minded enough to shoot our shot.
Yeah. And again, I mean, I really just, like I said, going to kind of add a little bit more detail. Like I really just put the application together, and then they asked me to retake my SATs. So I was like, yeah, let me see if I can take my SATs out here in Afghanistan. Luckily, there was an opportunity to do so. I was not the only one. And essentially, like I did what I needed to do at least to be considered. And then
What was your score, dude?
I don't even remember, man. I'm pretty sure
Just got
now
in.
I would not be allowed even to even put my name in a hat. But at that time, for whatever reason, again, I was allowed, and then obviously I had to retake it again. Um, when I was at the prep school, but by that time you've taken it 2 or 3 different times, so
Got
it
better.
becomes just like a
Get your
grind.
reps in.
Yeah, it just becomes a grind. But yeah, man. So when I look at it again holistically, it was an opportunity. It was an opportunity to step up, to step up into the. It was an opportunity to take advantage of an opportunity I would otherwise not have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that whole experience to me, I'm still reflecting, because there are still bits and pieces of it that I'm taking from then and applying it to now. Um, it was an awesome experience.
Yeah.
Like I wish that I could sit up here and say that I want my kids to have the same experience.
Mm-hmm.
If my kids, I would recommend for my kids to attend it if that's something that they wanted to do. There's no guarantee that obviously like they're gonna get in. They obviously have to work for it, but I think that's just another option that's on the table now, as opposed to just like going to community college.
The military academy specifically?
Yeah, like the military academy. Like I want my kids to get a college education.
Yeah.
Or at least I want them to know that that's an option for them.
Right.
And then however that looks like, but I want them to be able to see that it's possible. Where my friends and I talk about it all the time. Like our parents, for all and for better or for worse, were high school graduates, and that was kind of it.
Mm-hmm.
That was their educational peak.
Yeah.
Um, and then we never saw them. Now my kids, my cousins' kids, are watching their parents go through graduate school.
Mm.
That's like not
That's a new experience.
That's just a thing that like, because you think your parents are done learning, they know everything, right, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But it's like, nah. Like I went to school however many years ago. Now I had you, and now you're gonna watch me get my graduate school degree. I was given advice by someone one time, and again, all advice or any advice can be good depending on the context in which you receive it, right?
Right.
So I asked early on, I said, hey, should I leave this for my children? And one of the things that the person I spoke to said, I don't remember who it was, they said, you could either give it to your children,
Mm.
which could maybe, may or not, maybe uh, they don't have to really work hard because they know that they're going to have college paid for.
Yeah.
Or you can take it and use it, and your kids can watch you go through school.
Right.
And then through example, show them that you can work and go to school at the same time. Not that that's something that essentially they should do, but it just shows them that it takes a lot of work
Right.
to get something out of whatever it is that you're getting into.
That makes sense.
Hey, that's exactly what I said. I said that sounds good enough for me.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. Right, I chose to go to college early on, and then I'm finishing up a second master's right now, and my kids are watching me go to school.
That's awesome. So I think like for me, I like to always go like the bigger picture of things, and like you want to get a good education so you get a better job so you get better income.
Sure.
I want to get into like for me, I remember me being in real estate right now. I know the most expensive like monthly cost is always your housing,
Yeah.
majority of the time.
Yeah.
And being in the military, you don't have to worry about food or housing because it's covered already.
Kind of. I mean, they take the money out of your paycheck. For
Yeah, but then it's very
professional stuff.
subsidized compared to like the
Oh
cost of
yeah, yeah.
living
Oh yeah.
everywhere else.
For sure.
I think about it when I was enlisted. For me to have like $2,000 a month after housing costs and everything taken out, like I was okay, I was having fun.
Hey
I mean, it's
man.
not enough fun to like invest or anything because I didn't know better back then. But I want to know what do you find the differences pay? Maybe you could say from your rank enlisted to your officer pay, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's night and day, right? I mean, that's just that's just a reality. But obviously, your life situations are different, right?
Yeah,
So when I was enlisted, like the only thing I really cared about was having a car because
just get around.
I needed to get around. Yeah. Outside of that, like you don't need like ready to go meals. You don't need like you live off ramen or takeout.
Yeah,
And obviously you're still very young, so you can literally eat like shit. But as long as you're working out for PT every morning, like it's gonna eventually balance out, right?
right.
Um, give or take, and then and then obviously you save your money, so you live a lot more frugally because you only have a little bit. Like I keep telling people now, like I still remember getting at the end of the day my paychecks would be like 400 something dollars
Yeah.
every paycheck, like as an enlisted soldier, and then now obviously
What rank did you leave enlisted side?
I was a specialist,
What is that? E3?
E4.
E4. Okay.
Yeah. So again, not a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously the E4 is not get paid a little bit more money,
Yeah.
but obviously comparatively, it's also a lot more expensive to live off of that now.
Right.
So yeah. So and then obviously now the same thing, right? Now, you have a lot more money, but I think equally with that comes just a lot more responsibility. A lot more responsibility from a professional standpoint, a lot of responsibility from a family standpoint. And the reality is I think it just goes back to the dichotomy of like, well, the answer is just to make more money.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Avi, but at what point do you say like this is enough,
Right.
right? Both for your own personal health, for your family. So I think, I think that there's I think the military pays you well. I don't know for sure if it's enough. That's not just speaking for me, but just in general. Like cost of living is just
Expensive.
is excessive. I think to a certain extent. But again, everyone lives. There are plenty of people that do it.
Mm-hmm.
There are plenty of people that survive.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of people that are not doing it. So there's a spectrum, obviously, but for me, I've been able to do things that I would otherwise not be able to do, because of my transition. But I think my transition was never fueled by money. Like, of course, I knew that
Right.
officers make more money than enlisted people, but my motivation was nowhere near uh, any financial gain. It's never been that way. I don't stay in the service um, for the benefits. Like the
Mhm.
benefits make the decision to stay in a lot easier.
Right.
Um, but I think I would leave if it got to a point where it was just so toxic that it affected me and my family. Because no, in theory, no job is really worth it.
Right. No, yeah, I get
So
that a lot. So like I'm thinking so when you got out of West Point, that's when you get commission, right?
yes.
So what do you coming out of West Point, are you're definitely not 01, right? You become
So yeah,
01.
so for me specifically, um, rank wise, it was an 01. So there's the Army. I think all branches do it, but there's a different kind of tier where you have 01, 02, and 03 that have enlisted uh,
Background?
pay grades. Yeah, so like but you have to serve a minimum of 4 years, like 4 years and a day, I think.
Okay.
So, but for me, if you look at the scale, the when you commission, at least for me, I made, I think, the same amount of money as someone who was an 01E.
Oh,
Um,
what does that mean? I
it's
don't know.
just it's 01 with enlisted time. Um, but obviously, like,
What is that equivalent to?
it's essentially, it's not necessarily, there's no equivalence. Everybody's still the same rank. It's just your pay is a little bit higher because the expectation, I presume, is that if you've been in the military for more than 4 years, the likelihood of you having a kid,
No.
more expenses
Right. They give
is
you
is, is probably a
a
higher
bump in
propensity.
pay.
So they kind of just try to balance that out.
Okay.
Um, Again, that from a money standpoint is semantics.
Right.
Um, I think most people that make that decision to cross over, it might maybe start um, with money, but it doesn't keep you in the job if it's about money.
Right.
But yeah, so
I mean, I've been thinking about that like recently in the civilian world now. I'm learning more and more about like quiet quitting and everybody who's leaving their jobs after 1, 2 years.
yeah,
And it's
yeah, yeah,
like the pension of staying with one company for 20 years isn't worth it for most civilians because if they know in 2 years, if I gained up this much experience and I jump to the next job,
yeah,
like I have a friend who grew up started in like oil tech,
yeah,
jumped on. Now he's with like 3M, and he's been with 3M long enough within a year to run a division of the software engineering.
yeah.
But he still wants to go into like Facebook, Meta, just because he can get that pay jump.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, right? This is all purely observation and speculation, right?
Yeah,
So I think it's just a different way of looking at compensation, right? So I think the fear that started was a generational fear of, here are my parents, they worked in this company for 20 years and this is all they got.
they got a pension.
Sure,
Yeah,
but some people didn't get it, or if they did, it was invested in something and then it got washed out.
yeah,
Um, Maybe once, maybe twice, whatever the case may be,
yeah.
right? So there's a fear in sticking to one thing for 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
Um, but then also there's just like with most things, it's a little bit easier to go from job to job. Like,
As long as you're getting compensated enough.
exactly, right? So
Hmm.
like you can be at a current job that is okay,
Yeah.
and you can go on Indeed, for on the government side, you can go to USA Jobs and
Yeah.
just shop around.
I mean, because more is about family. I think that's what it is. Because at the end of the day, you just want to be able to provide for your family. Am I right?
Well, I think it's that's definitely an inherent driver. I think for folks,
Yeah.
and I think that it kind of boils down to that. Like if
Yeah.
you had to choose,
Right. End of the day, you know what's important.
but I think that nowadays, compensation is a mixture of being able to provide, being able to have less friction in your life, but also the value of the skill set that you bring, right?
Okay.
Like there's a reason why, Cristiano Ronaldo and Leo Messi like demand certain amounts of money. It
Right.
has nothing to do with just how good they are on the field. It's also they have ancillary effects on jersey sales, attendance,
Hmm.
stock price or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like they try to capture that value inside of their essentially compensation package. That's like you going to your job and saying like, all right, yeah, they're gonna start you off at 75, but you're like, hey, but like if I start posting content about you guys, a million, if you have a million followers, a million people are going
To
to then
see.
see it.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily for you to say like I'm worth $10,000 more, but it's just a matter of fact, right? That maybe that might lead to signups or promos to a new whatever. Obviously, all that gets leveraged out. I say that to say primarily is that in the military, you know, our rates are fixed.
Yeah.
Our rates are fixed by what we pay, whether or not you're the best, and whether or not you're the worst.
Right.
And obviously, the nature of your job provides different perks. I think for me, what I try to do, even so now today, more so than I have in the past, is you know I do a lot of reflection on just the business in general. It's kind of just been my thing where I try to draw lessons from. This might be a hot take, but I think that you know, I think that I understand people have different needs,
Yeah.
but the president's salary should be like a cap
Okay.
for most people, right? So why
President of a company, president of America.
president of America?
Okay.
In quote unquote, it's the hardest job, most busiest job, whatever, right?
Yeah, you control everything.
To a certain extent, right?
Yeah.
And they only make 400,000.
Yeah.
But again, they don't really pay for anything. They have a house, right? Uh, Dinner's paid for, transportation's paid for, all these other
Security.
things. So what do you really need, right? And I'm assuming with most wealthy people, at least, obviously what I can tell, because I don't really know wealthy people like that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's very similar.
Here's a quick question. What's your definition of wealthy then?
So yeah, so for me, it's funny because I'm exploring that option now. So
Yeah.
the the short answer, I don't know what it is for me.
Okay.
What I do know is that it is not what I thought it was. And that's meaning that you know how sometimes in the movies they'd be like, so what's your number?
Yeah.
My number is much lower than that I thought it was.
Number in what sense?
Like,
To like buy you?
no, like to essentially be comfortable.
Oh, okay.
For me and my family,
Okay.
right? Because a long time ago, um, a long time ago, there was this website called LearnVest. It's still around now, but they don't have this Mash calculator anymore. So we all remember Mash for other reasons when we were growing up in like middle school and high school. But essentially, what they did is they were able to make a calculator. You answer a bunch of qualitative questions, and then on the back end, they had, I'm assuming, values related to that, and then they just expanded over your lifetime,
Okay.
and then that was essentially how much your life would cost
To
um,
live or
to at least have, right?
okay.
So like Tim Ferriss talks about this a lot in his original book, The 4 Hour Work Week, and he
Yeah.
was like, I have a Lambo, and he's like, it's simple. All I said was, how much is a Lambo going to cost me a month? And then he went out and created something that would essentially pay for his Lambo,
Right.
right? So you use that microcosm and say, these are the things that I kind of want in my life. I want a house. All right, how much? What kind of house would you want?
Mhm.
I want a 3,000 square foot house. It's about, well, let's use Montgomery County prices, so like 3 or 4K, right? Something like that. In a nice-ish neighborhood, right?
Okay.
So we'll say modest, right? Let's say we'll just ballpark it for easy,
Yeah.
3 to 4K.
Okay.
You do that over a 30-year mortgage, then you just put that in a, if you have an Excel spreadsheet, put that in a monthly column or a yearly column or whatever.
Amortization chart.
Yeah, everything, and then you add all your stuff in there, your Netflix, your all that, whatever,
Yeah.
and then it should by the end of it spit out what you need to be making a year
Right.
to at least have all of the creature comforts that we need,
Okay.
right? That at least should get you relatively close, right?
Okay.
For me, I will tell you that uh, my life in the military has been plenty comfortable.
Okay.
Like I don't have like if I end up, I'll frame it this way. I don't have I don't. If I were to make, let's say, $1 billion,
Yeah.
it would only be like ancillary to the work that I would be doing. So, like, if someone told me, if it's instead of saying I want $1 billion, so I'm gonna go do this,
Okay.
it's the other way around for me.
I want to do this.
I want to do this, and oh, by the way,
I make.
I happen to make, or I
Okay.
just stumbled upon making $1 billion.
Well, okay. So just break it down. Simplify this. Do you know what your number is?
I haven't finished calculating it yet.
Okay.
No, so I started doing the lifestyle calculator, but then I got distracted and ended up just doing a traditional budget spreadsheet for myself.
Okay.
So now I'm done with that, and I did one for my mom,
Yeah.
and then I'm going back to the lifestyle calculator.
Okay. How about this? So this is what I do for my free consultations. How much a month do you think you need for your family to be comfortable?
Yeah,
How much do you spend?
it's tough. Only reason I say it's tough is because um, we don't. My family, we spend on what's required, which is quote unquote like rent, utilities,
Right.
and then you add in groceries,
Yeah.
and then Wi-Fi has now become a utility, so you
Yes.
add that in,
Yeah.
right? That's about it. Everything else is kind of extra.
So okay,
Like,
but what is that number though?
so that number, well, we're not paying rent right now, but I would say
Or in the future, say for your future home.
yeah.
All included. What do you think that number is going to be?
So I think I have at least that filled out. Let me see if I even have it.
Just to give an example, so I did this with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
Our breakdown for say like 3 kids,
Oh yeah.
us and
I
a
don't have it
house
right
with a
now.
mortgage with like $3,000 is going to be around $6,000-7,000 a month. So that's after taxes.
Yeah.
So when you break that down, say if you factor in 30% tax, in general, I need to be making at least $9,000 to $10,000 a month.
A month, yeah.
Which is also equivalent to about 118 to 120,000 a year.
And that's 2 incomes, right?
Well, I mean, depends on who wants to work.
But yes,
Yeah.
or you
household.
could or you can divide it where, let's say you make
Yeah.
80, she makes whatever
Yeah.
the difference is. Yeah, and so that is exactly how my girlfriend and we kind of discuss funds, and kind of I use that format, and I stumbled upon this. Finance was one of those things that I think I've been scared to learn, but I've also just taken my time with it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is just challenging the thoughts
Of your past.
right?
Yeah.
And a lot of these things, like, oh man, all right, we might go down a rabbit hole here, but
Sure.
I'll start anyways. So in the Spanish culture, there is this fear from wherever it was created, is that the IRS can come and take your home away.
Yeah.
So like their financial like mindset is, whatever I do, I have to pay the IRS, because if not, they can boot me out of my house.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so nationality wise, you're Dominican.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, like, that's crazy, number one, because I don't think the IRS can physically send people to your house.
Unless it's a tax lien, property tax lien.
But again, most people again, you would, if you were in that situation, you would know.
Yeah, exactly.
But the IRS doesn't like send agents to your house to like
Not gonna do
kick
that. The
you
little
out of the
meme.
house.
Hello.
You know what I mean? Like there's a process for that, and obviously, like
Yeah, there's a whole
there's a
judicial
very
checks and
unique.
balances.
There's just it's a very unique way. So, anyways, so it starts with that, right? So, like at least when I reflect back on my financial journey, a lot of it comes from my parents, um, essentially saying no to a lot of things, saying that they didn't have enough money,
Yeah.
um, saying, with the proverbial fear that the IRS was going to show up to the house and essentially kick them on the street. Um, Also, my parents never working on a budget,
Okay.
never understanding taxes, and just a lot of different things that we now have the access to.
Right.
So it's not necessarily that, again, that they didn't know or didn't want to know. It was more of like they just didn't have access to that, or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we do the same thing. We're looking at, and I don't hold back either. So I'm starting to build my list now of stuff like we're talking car, kids, school, whether it be public or private, whatever your heart desires, and that should give you an honest thing.
Yeah.
And if you get a huge ass number, you either have to work really hard to meet it,
Yep.
or you have to make the decision right then and there that like, not all four kids are going to go to private school,
Yeah.
right? And and again, this is that none of that is like an absolute truth. Like once you're done, it's not written in stone, and like you can't change it.
Yeah.
It just gives you a good, realistic
Guideline.
snapshot of where you're at.
Right.
I'm sure you guys do that in the real estate process where people are like, yeah, someone told me or the internet told me that I'm eligible for 700K. And then you run their stuff and it's like, actually 550 is
Yeah.
like your maximum. And
Right.
that's even stretching it.
Yeah.
And then they're like shocked. And it's like, well, no, like in reality, like that's just how it is. So
Right.
I did the same thing when I bought when I bought the house that I have in Missouri now. It's like, yeah, like we knew how much we could afford, but
Didn't want to stretch it.
well, I mean, we knew we were going to be there for a short term. We got a deal on a property. It was really really big, and these folks were a little older, and they were kind of moved. They were downsizing to a retirement home type deal, so they wanted to let it go. It wasn't necessarily a fixer upper, but there was some issues that they weren't going to fix. So it made sense from a financial standpoint. It made sense.
Okay.
Anyways, so yes, so I'm working on that, and the one thing I would recommend that people do is do the homework, take that weekend off, sit in front of your couch, put some Netflix on or whatever, and slowly burn through that process of trying to figure out like what your lifestyle costs. And if you aren't the kind of person that likes to hypothesize, then use what your cost is right now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I think that might have been it. Because like, if I were to wrap everything up, it would be something like, what is one thing you want the world to know that you could teach them, or just want them to figure out? I don't know if you want that to be it or something else.
Nah, I think on a more basic level, you know, I think that there is a underlying desperation to achieving some outcome, climbing to the hill of some mountain. And there's like a saying I think somewhere it's like when you reach the top of a mountain, you look around and there's another mountain to climb up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, that's not to say like forget the climb, but it's just like, you know, do your climb. Or what the book or out of Seven Habits, I'm gonna paraphrase it to make it fit, but it's not about climbing the ladder. It's about making sure that the ladder is against the right wall.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
Right. So that is the most important thing is, we do not have to rush. You do not have to rush. You can take your time. The process or the route is going to look completely different than what's out there, but it's about using those experiences to extract whatever value it is that you have, um, and do it honestly, and to some sort of moral code, And then the rest of it is, whatever. Like, not all of us are going to be billionaires or millionaires, but we can still live a happy life with all the creature comforts that we like, within reason. So yeah, don't rush, because all these successful people, some of these have been doing this for 20, 30 years.
They're not happy.
We're just getting started.
Yeah.
So that's really my last takeaway.
That's crazy. Well, then, yeah. Appreciate you, bro.
Hey, anytime. Anytime.
We're probably going deeper this another time, or just for the future. You're going to be here for a while.
Yeah. We'll be around. We'll have more coffee and have more discussions, I'm sure. So appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for being on.